In the sun-weathered hills of rural California, where dreams often wither like unwatered crops, a single father's quiet strength is about to change everything. Tom Miller's calloused hands tell the story of countless dawn-to-dusk battles to keep his small farm alive, all while raising his young daughter Sarah on his own. But nature has other plans. When lightning ignites the nearby forest, turning peaceful woods into an inferno, Tom faces a moment that will redefine courage. Through smoke and flame, he discovers a trapped child, someone else's precious daughter, and without hesitation, plunges into the fire. Little does he know that this selfless act will bring an unexpected visitor, a powerful woman whose private jet touches down on his dusty airstrip the very next morning. But who is this mysterious mother, and how will her arrival forever change the lives of this humble farming family? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The rooster hadn't crowed yet, but Tom Miller was already pulling on his worn work boots by the dim light of dawn. His movements were practiced and quiet, careful not to wake 8-year-old Sarah sleeping in the room next door. The floorboards of their century-old farmhouse knew his morning routine well enough not to creak beneath his feet anymore. He paused at Sarah's door, cracking it open just enough to hear her soft breathing. On her desk sat her latest artwork, a crayon drawing of two stick figures holding hands beneath a yellow sun. Tom and Sarah, with the conspicuous empty space beside them that neither of them talked about anymore. 4 years had passed since Rebecca's accident, but some spaces never quite filled in. The morning air carried the sweet, sharp scent of approaching autumn as Tom stepped onto the porch. His farmer's eyes read the sky like a familiar book. Dark clouds gathering on the horizon promised the season's first real storm. They needed the rain, but something in those clouds made his neck prickle with unease. The farm stretched out before him, 40 acres of once prosperous land, now barely keeping them afloat. The mortgage payments were getting harder to meet, but he'd be damned if he'd let Sarah know that. His daughter deserved the stability of the only home she'd ever known, the land her mother had loved so fiercely. Old Buck, their aging tractor, coughed to life on the third try. Tom patted its rusted hood like an old friend as he began his morning checks. The irrigation system needed attention again. He'd have to splice another section of pipe today. Every repair was a balance between necessity and what their dwindling savings could bear. "Daddy?" Sarah's voice carried across the yard, still soft with sleep. She stood on the porch in her favorite pajamas, the ones with cartoon horses that were getting too short at the ankles. "Morning, sunshine," Tom called back, hiding his concern that she was up so early. "Everything okay?" Sarah padded across the yard in her rubber boots, clutching something to her chest. "I made you something for your wallet." She held out a carefully folded piece of paper. Tom wiped his hands on his jeans and took it gently, unfolding it to reveal another drawing. This one of him in his tractor, looking rather heroic against a backdrop of corn stalks that stretched to the sky. "Now that's some mighty fine art," he said, meaning every word, "though I think you made me look a bit too handsome." Sarah giggled, the sound sweeter than any music. "That's exactly how you look, Daddy." She squinted at the sky. "Is it going to rain today?" Tom followed her gaze to the darkening clouds. "Looks like it might. Why don't you help me get the animals settled before breakfast? Then we'll need to get you ready for school." They worked together with the ease of long practice, Sarah chattering about her upcoming science project while they fed the chickens and checked on Molly, their elderly milk cow. Tom watched his daughter scatter feed with confident hands, her small face serious with concentration. She was growing up too fast, taking on responsibilities no 8-year-old should have to shoulder. Back in the kitchen, Tom made breakfast one-handed while reviewing bills spread across the counter. The numbers refused to add up any better than they had last night. The bank's latest letter sat unopened beneath the stack, its presence like a weight on his chest. "Can I have chocolate milk?" Sarah asked, climbing onto her usual chair. How about we save that for special occasions? Tom suggested, setting a glass of regular milk beside her plate of eggs. Got to keep some treats special, right? Sarah nodded, but he caught the slight fall of her shoulders. It was the little things that hurt the most, not being able to give her simple pleasures like chocolate milk or new shoes when she needed them. Rebecca would have known how to make it all better, how to turn even lean times into adventures. The school bus's distant rumble prompted their usual morning rush. Sarah gathered her backpack, while Tom packed her lunch. Peanut butter and jelly, an apple from their own trees, and one of the cookie packets he'd been rationing from the bulk store. "Got your homework?" he asked, smoothing down a stubborn cowlick in her hair. "Yes, Daddy." She rolled her eyes with the particular patience of children dealing with predictable parents. "Science project materials. In my backpack. Kiss for luck?" This earned him a bright smile and a quick hug before she darted toward the door. Tom watched from the porch as she climbed aboard the bus, waving until it disappeared around the bend. The morning silence settled back around him, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. He turned to face the day's work, mental calculations already running. The irrigation system would take at least 3 hours. Then there was the fence in the north pasture, and he needed to check those weird sounds the tractor was making. The storm would complicate everything. He'd have to work fast. The morning passed in a blur of physical labor, each task bleeding into the next. Tom's hands moved with mechanical precision while his mind churned over numbers and deadlines. The bank wanted their next payment by the end of the month. The feed store had already extended his credit twice. Something would have to give soon. Around noon, the wind picked up, carrying the metallic tang of approaching rain. Tom looked up from his work on the irrigation pipe to see the storm clouds had darkened to an ominous purple-black. Lightning flickered in their depths, still too distant for thunder. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a weather alert. He pulled it out with grimy hands, squinting at the screen. Severe thunderstorm warning, high winds, possible lightning strikes. The forecast that had promised scattered showers had shifted into something more threatening. The wind gusted again, stronger this time, carrying a few fat drops of rain. Tom gathered his tools, mind already shifting to storm preparations. He needed to secure the loose section of barn roof, bring in anything that could become a projectile, check the emergency supplies in the cellar. Sarah would be home in a few hours, and he wanted everything battened down before then. As he worked, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that this storm was different from the others they'd weathered. There was something in the air, an electricity, that had nothing to do with the lightning now flickering more frequently in the clouds above. Change was coming, riding the wind like a wild thing. He just hoped they were ready for whatever that change might bring. The weather alert had spread through the valley like wildfire. By early afternoon, the usually quiet farm road saw a steady stream of pickups heading to Earl's General Store for supplies. Tom pulled in just as Earl was taping the latest weather report to his front window, the paper already curling in the humid air. "Looking rough out there, Tom," Earl called out, his weathered face creased with concern. At 72, he'd seen enough California summers to read the signs. There, saying it could be the biggest electrical storm we've had in decades. Inside the store, Tom found his neighbor, Grace Martinez, sorting through batteries. Her teenage sons were loading sandbags into a truck outside. "Sarah can stay with us if the storm gets bad," Grace offered, her eyes kind. She'd been a godsend. After Rebecca passed, helping with childcare and refusing any payment beyond the occasional basket of vegetables. "Appreciate that, Grace. But the bus should get her home before the worst hits." Tom checked his watch, trying to ignore the knot in his stomach. The school hadn't called yet, which meant they were still planning regular dismissal. He grabbed essentials with practiced efficiency, batteries, matches, a new flashlight to replace the one Sarah had accidentally broken last week. At the counter, Earl was updating his ledger, the pages dog-eared and stained with coffee. "Put it on your tab?" Earl asked, though they both knew Tom's tab was already stretching friendship's bounds. "No, I'll pay cash today." Tom counted out wrinkled bills, pretending not to notice how Earl's eyes lingered on the dwindling contents of his wallet. The older man had known Rebecca since she was a girl, had watched her grow up and eventually marry the outsider who'd bought the old Miller place. Now he watched her widower struggle to keep their dream alive. "Tom!" Earl called as he headed for the door. "Got some old plywood out back if you need it. No charge." The generosity of small communities ran deep, but pride ran deeper. Tom hesitated, then nodded. "Thanks, Earl. I'll send Sarah with some of those honey-crisp apples once they're ripe." The drive home was tense, wind buffeting his truck as dark clouds roiled overhead. The radio crackled with static between weather updates, each one worse than the last. Chamber Creek, normally a docile stream cutting through his property, was already rising with runoff from the hills. Sarah's school bus appeared through the gathering gloom, right on schedule. She bounded down the driveway, pigtails flying, seemingly energized by the electric atmosphere. "Mrs. Wilson says we're learning about weather systems," she announced. Following Tom into the house, "Did you know lightning can be hotter than the surface of the sun?" "That so?" Tom helped her hang up her backpack. "Then maybe we should make sure we're ready for it. Want to be my special storm preparation assistant?" Sarah's eyes lit up. She loved any task that made her feel grown up. Together, they went through their emergency checklist. Flashlights tested, water jugs filled, battery radio placed on the kitchen counter. Tom showed her how to close the storm shutters, making a game of it to keep the worry from his voice. "What about the animals?" Sarah asked as they finished boarding up the last window. Thunder rolled overhead closer now, already moved them. "To the secure barn." Tom ruffled her hair. "Molly's probably wondering what all the fuss is about." The power flickered once, twice, then steadied. Tom's phone rang. Grace checking in. The Martinez family was battening down too, and the emergency response team was on standby. In a community this small, everyone pitched in during crises. Tom himself had been on the volunteer fire department until Sarah was born. "Daddy?" Sarah's voice had lost its excitement, turning small and worried. "Is this going to be like the storm that took Mommy?" The question hit him like a physical blow. That storm had been different. A freak accident, black ice on a mountain road. But to an 8-year-old, maybe all dangerous weather felt the same. No, sunshine. He knelt to her level, meeting her eyes. "This is just a big thunderstorm. We're safe here together, okay? Want to help me make some storm soup?" Cooking together was their comfort ritual. Sarah perched on a kitchen stool, carefully, cutting vegetables with a butter knife while Tom browned meat from their neighbor's farm. Outside, the wind howled through the valley and lightning began to split the sky with increasing frequency. The power went out just as they finished eating. Sarah squealed, more with delight than fear, as Tom lit their emergency lanterns. The battery radio reported the storm's center was nearly upon them, with unprecedented lightning activity in the hills above the valley. "Can we make shadow puppets?" Sarah asked, already positioning her hands in the lantern light. This too was part of their storm routine, a way to turn darkness into play. Tom was about to answer when a massive thunderclap shook the house. Sarah jumped, abandoning shadow puppets to crawl into his lap. Through the boarded windows, the lightning's glow was constant now, turning night into stuttering day. 1,000, 1,000, Sarah counted between lightning and thunder. Just as he'd taught her, the gaps grew shorter. The storm was right overhead. A new sound cut through the thunder, the emergency alert tone on his phone. Tom read the message twice, his blood running cold. Multiple lightning strike fires reported in hills above Chamber. Valley, residents advised to prepare for possible evacuation. Sarah felt his tension. "Daddy, just a precaution, sunshine." He kept his voice steady. "But I want you to pack your emergency bag, okay? Just like we practiced." While Sarah darted to her room, Tom quickly gathered their important documents. Deed, insurance papers, the small box of Rebecca's things he couldn't bear to lose. Through the kitchen window, he could see an orange glow beginning to tinge the clouds above the hills. The emergency radio crackled, multiple spot fires merging, high winds driving flames toward Chamber Valley. Emergency services mobilizing. Thunder crashed again, and in the momentary silence that followed, Tom heard something that made his heart stop. A child's scream, distant but distinct, carried on the wind from the direction of the woods. Tom rushed to the window, straining to hear over the storm's fury. There it was again, a high, terrified cry carried on the wind. His mind raced through possibilities: hikers caught in the storm, someone from the camping grounds, or worse, local. Kids who might have been playing in the woods despite the weather warnings. "Sarah!" He turned to find his daughter in the doorway, clutching her packed backpack. "Change of plans. We need to get to Grace's house right now." The drive to the Martinez farm took less than 5 minutes, but each second felt like an eternity. The sky had taken on an otherworldly orange glow, and ash was already beginning to fall like grey snow. Sarah pressed her face against the truck's window, eyes wide with fear and fascination. "Grace!" Tom called out as they pulled up. She was already on her porch, silhouetted against the emergency lights. "There's someone in trouble up near the woods. Can you—" "We'll take care of Sarah," Grace cut in, understanding immediately. Her oldest son, Miguel, appeared beside her, ready to help. "Be careful, Tom. The fire department's already heading up." Tom knelt beside Sarah, who had gone very quiet. "I need you to be brave for me, Sunshine. Stay with Grace until I come back." "Like Mommy said to be brave," Sarah's voice trembled. "Exactly like that." He hugged her fiercely, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I love you more than anything in this world." "Love you too, Daddy." She clutched his shirt before letting go, trying so hard to be strong. Tom's truck fought against the wind as he drove toward the woods. The emergency beacon on his dashboard, left over from his volunteer firefighter days, cast rotating red light across the smoke-filled air. Through his open window, he could hear the approaching sirens of the fire department, but they were still minutes away. The scream came again, clearer now. Female, young, probably a teenager. Tom pulled off onto the old logging road, his headlights catching the apocalyptic scene. Lightning had struck a massive oak, splitting it down the middle. The burning trunk had toppled across the hiking path, and flames were spreading rapidly. Through the dry underbrush, "Hello!" he shouted into the smoke-filled darkness. "Fire department's coming. Call out if you can hear me. Help! Please!" The voice was closer, punctuated by coughing. "I'm trapped." Tom grabbed his emergency kit and the heavy flashlight from under his seat. The smoke was getting thicker, making his eyes water as he played the light across the burning landscape. There, about 50 yards in, a flash of bright clothing through the smoke. A massive branch had come down with the lightning-struck oak, pinning someone underneath. As Tom got closer, he realized with a jolt that it wasn't a teenager at all, but a much younger child. A girl, maybe 10 or 11, wearing an expensive-looking hiking outfit now torn and sooty. "I've got you!" he called, dropping to his knees. Beside her. "Are you hurt?" "My leg," she choked out between coughs. "I can't move it. Please don't leave me." "I'm not going anywhere." Tom assessed the situation quickly. The branch wasn't burning yet, but it would be soon. He could see where it had her trapped, not crushing her thankfully, but definitely pinning her down. "What's your name?" "Emma," she managed, her face streaked with tears and ash. "I was hiking with my guide, but we got separated when the storm hit. Then the lightning—" She broke off, coughing again. The heat was intensifying. Tom could hear the fire's roar growing louder, see the flames advancing through the trees. The shoulder strap of Emma's backpack caught his eye. There was some kind of electronic device attached to it, blinking steadily despite the chaos. No. Time to wonder about that now. He stripped off his jacket, draping it over Emma to protect her from the falling embers. "Okay, Emma, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to lift this branch, and when I say go, I need you to pull yourself out. Can you do that?" She nodded, eyes huge with fear and trust. Tom positioned himself carefully, getting the best grip he could on the massive branch. His back screamed in protest as he lifted, muscles straining to their limit. "Now, Emma! Go!" Emma dragged herself forward, crying out in pain, but not stopping. As soon as she was clear, Tom let the branch drop, scooping her up in his arms. She was surprisingly light, clinging to him like a frightened koala. The way back to his truck was a nightmare of smoke and heat. Tom's lungs burned, and his eyes were streaming, but he pushed forward, one step at a time. Emma had buried her face in his shirt, her whole body trembling. A massive cracking sound split the air, another tree giving way to the fire. Tom dove forward, twisting to protect Emma as burning branches crashed down behind them. The heat was unbearable now, the smoke so thick he could barely see. Through the chaos, he heard the blessed sound of sirens, much closer now. Flashlight beams cut through the smoke and voices called out. Tom changed direction, heading toward the lights. They burst out of the woods just as the first fire truck arrived, its emergency lights painting everything in surreal reds and blues. Paramedics rushed forward with oxygen masks and blankets. Tom's legs gave out as he set Emma carefully on the waiting gurney, his body finally registering the toll of what he'd just done. Her left leg, he managed to tell the paramedics between coughs, might be broken. She was trapped under a branch. Someone pressed an oxygen mask to his own face, and he gratefully sucked in the clean air. Through the chaos of emergency responders and equipment, he saw Fire Chief Rodriguez directing his crews to attack the blaze. "Tom!" The chief broke away to clap him on the shoulder. "Damn foolish thing you did going in there alone. Also damn brave." He glanced at Emma, who was being loaded into an ambulance. "Any idea who she is?" Tom shook his head, still catching his breath. "Said her name's Emma. Was hiking with a guide when the storm hit." He described the electronic device he'd noticed on her backpack. The chief's eyebrows rose. "Sounds like a high-end emergency beacon, not the kind of equipment casual hikers will carry." He keyed his radio, relaying the information to dispatch. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving Tom shaky and exhausted. His clothes were scorched, his lungs felt like they were full of glass, and every muscle screamed in protest. But he was alive, and so was Emma. "You need to get checked out," Rodriguez said, gesturing to a waiting paramedic. "My daughter," Tom started to protest. "I'll send someone to tell her you're okay. Get in the ambulance, Tom. That's an order." As the paramedics helped him into the ambulance beside Emma's gurney, Tom caught a glimpse of the forest through the open doors. The fire was spreading rapidly now, painting the night sky orange. But through a break in the smoke, he saw something that made him blink in surprise. A helicopter, sleek and expensive-looking, circling the area with searchlights sweeping the ground. The doors closed, and the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing. Emma reached out with her oxygen mask, still in place, gripping Tom's hand with surprising strength. He squeezed back gently, wondering who this child was, and who would be waiting for her at the hospital. The emergency room lights were too bright after the smoke-filled darkness of the forest. Tom sat on the edge of an examination bed, trying not to fidget as a doctor listened to his lungs. The scorched remains of his jacket lay discarded on a nearby chair, and the smell of smoke still clung to his clothes and hair. "Remarkably little damage, considering," the doctor said, removing her stethoscope. "Some minor burns on your hands. Smoke inhalation, but nothing permanent. You were lucky." Lucky. The word triggered a memory Tom usually kept locked away. Another hospital, another doctor, 4 years ago. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, but your wife wasn't lucky. The ice... There was nothing anyone could have done." A nurse's voice snapped him back to the present. "Sir? The little girl is asking for you." Tom found Emma in a private room, her leg elevated, and wrapped in temporary bandages. She'd been cleaned up, but fear still lingered in her eyes. An IV dripped clear fluid into her arm, and various monitors beeped steadily beside her bed. "You came back," she said, relief flooding her face. "Course." "I did." Tom settled into the chair beside her bed. "How's the leg?" "Broken in 2 places." She spoke with the matter-of-fact tone of someone used to medical terminology. They're waiting for my mum before they do anything else. She's flying in. Emma hesitated, then added, she's kind of important. There might be a lot of fuss when she gets here. Tom nodded, thinking of the helicopter he'd seen, the expensive equipment Emma had been carrying. That's okay. Important moms are still just moms when their kids are hurt. Emma's monitors beeped a little faster. I wasn't supposed to go hiking. Mom's going to be so mad. Maybe. Tom thought of all the times he'd been angry with Sarah out of fear for her safety. But I bet she'll be too relieved you're okay too. Stay mad for long. A memory surfaced, Rebecca standing in their kitchen, hands on her hips. Of course I'm angry. You could have been killed on that tractor. What would Sarah and I do without you? Her anger had been a shield for her fear, just as his gruffness often masked his own terror of losing the people he loved. The door burst open, startling them both. A harried-looking man in a suit rushed in. Miss Chen, thank God. Your mother's helicopter is 10 minutes out. The press are already gathering outside. Emma shrank back against her pillows. Tom felt her small hand slip into his again, seeking comfort. It's okay, he said softly. Want me to stay until your mum gets here? She nodded, relief evident in her face. The suited man looked like he wanted to object, but thought better of it. The next few minutes were a blur of activity as hospital staff and what appeared to be private security personnel bustled in and out. Tom remained a steady presence beside Emma's bed, fielding her questions about the farm, Sarah, and especially Molly the cow. He recognized her chatter as an attempt to stay calm, just as Sarah would talk about school projects when she was nervous. A commotion in the hallway signaled a new arrival. Emma's hand tightened on his as the door opened again. The woman who entered moved like someone used to commanding attention. Despite the late hour and obvious signs of hasty travel, she carried herself with unmistakable authority. But Tom saw past that to what really mattered. The way her composed expression cracked at the sight of her daughter, the slight tremor in her hands as she rushed to the bed. "Emma, baby." Her voice broke as she gathered her daughter into her arms. Tom stood quietly, intending to slip out, but Emma's voice stopped him. "Mum, this is Mr. Miller. He saved me. He carried me out of the fire." Catherine Chen, Tom recognized her now from news coverage of her tech company, turned to face him. The full force of her attention was startling. "You're the one who went into the forest, who heard her screaming." Tom nodded, suddenly very aware of his smoke-stained clothes and unshaven face. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Catherine's voice was firm. "They wouldn't have. Believe me, I know exactly how many people passed by before you heard her." She touched something on her phone, and Tom recognized the device from Emma's backpack. It must have been broadcasting her location the whole time. The memory hit him like a physical blow. Rebecca's car, its emergency locator going off in the storm. But the roads had been too icy, the responders too far away. By the time they reached her, "Mr. Miller," Catherine's voice pulled him back. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Are you all right?" "Just tired," he managed. "Should let you two have some time together." "Wait," Emma called out. "Will you come back tomorrow? Please." Tom hesitated, looking at Catherine. She nodded, something softening in her expression. "Yes, please do. I'd like to speak with you properly, once things are calmer." In the hallway, Tom leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. His phone buzzed, a text from Grace saying Sarah was asleep but asking for him. Another from Fire Chief Rodriguez, reporting the fire was finally contained, though the woods would be smoldering for days. He needed to get home, to hold his daughter, and remind himself they were both safe. But first he had to walk past the waiting reporters, past the curious stares and questions about his heroism. Rebecca's voice echoed in his memory. "Sometimes the bravest thing isn't rushing in, Tom. Sometimes it's just putting one foot in front of the other and keeping going." So that's what he did, one step at a time, smelling of smoke and victory and loss, heading home to Sarah and whatever tomorrow might bring. The drive home from the hospital felt surreal, Dawn was breaking over the valley, painting the smoke-tinged sky in shades of pink and grey. Tom's truck smelled of ash and antiseptic, and his hospital bracelet caught the early light as he turned. The wheel! The Martinez house was quiet when he pulled up, but Grace was already on the porch with a cup of coffee waiting. She took one look at his face and pulled him into a fierce hug. "Sarah's still sleeping," she whispered as she released him. "Miguel set up the spare room for her. Channel 7 was here an hour ago trying to get an interview. We sent them packing." Tom's stomach clenched. "News travels fast. You rescued Catherine Chen's daughter, Tom. That's not exactly small-town news." Grace pressed the coffee into his hands. "They're calling you a hero." He shook his head, the word sitting uncomfortably on his shoulders. "I just did what needed doing." Inside, he found Sarah curled up on the guest bed, her small form wrapped around her favorite stuffed horse. The sight of her safe and peaceful made his throat tight. He sat gently on the edge of the bed, and her eyes fluttered open. "Daddy?" She launched herself into his arms, not minding the lingering smell of smoke. "Did you save them? The person who was screaming?" "Yeah. Sunshine. She's okay. Her name's Emma, and she's just a few years older than you." Sarah pulled back, studying his face with that too-old expression she sometimes got. "You got hurt." She touched the bandage on his hand. "Just a little scrape, not even worth mentioning." He managed to smile. "But I could sure use some breakfast. Think Grace would let us raid her kitchen?" The morning passed in a blur of phone calls and visitors. The fire department needed his statement. The hospital called with follow-up instructions. Local reporters kept driving past the house, slowing down to take pictures. Tom kept Sarah inside, away from the growing circus. Around noon, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was Catherine Chen's assistant, politely but firmly requesting his presence at the hospital that afternoon. "Ms. Chen would like to discuss the events of last night, Mr. Miller. A car can be sent for you." Tom glanced at Sarah, who was drawing at Grace's kitchen table. "I appreciate the offer, but I have my truck and my daughter. Of course, please bring her. Emma has been asking about meeting her." The hospital had transformed since his departure. Security guards stood at every entrance, and a small media encampment had grown in the parking lot. Tom parked in the back, as instructed, and was quickly ushered through service corridors to avoid the press. Emma's room had changed too. Flowers filled every surface, and tablets displayed get-well messages from around the world. Emma herself looked brighter, though her leg was now properly cast. "Mr. Miller," her face lit up, "and you must be Sarah. I love your dress." Sarah, usually shy with strangers, smiled at the genuine warmth in Emma's voice. Within minutes, the girls were deep in conversation about horses, school, and the relative merits of different flavors of hospital jello. Catherine Chen stood by the window, watching the interaction with an expression that reminded Tom of how he sometimes looked at Sarah, a mixture of love and lingering fear of what might have been lost. "Mr. Miller," she said quietly, "I've spent the morning reading the fire department's report. The wind speed, the rate the fire was spreading." She paused, composing herself. "You very nearly died saving my daughter." Tom shifted uncomfortably. "I wasn't thinking about that at the time." "No, you were thinking about saving a child who needed help." She turned to face him fully. "Tell me, what do you do for a living?" "I'm a farmer. Small operation, 40 acres. Catherine nodded as if confirming something. "And how's that going?" The question was gentle, but Tom felt his defenses rise. Before he could respond, Sarah's voice piped up from across the room. "Daddy, can Emma come see our farm when she's better? I want to show her Molly." The two fathers exchanged a look of mingled amusement and resignation, recognizing the irresistible force of childhood friendship in the making. Neither could have guessed how that simple request would change everything. The next morning dawned clear and cool, the air finally free of smoke. Tom was in the barn doing the early feed when he heard it, the distinctive whine of jet engines much too close. He stepped outside just as a sleek private jet touched down on his rough airstrip, a remnant from the farm's more prosperous days when crop dusters were a common sight. The jet's door opened before the engines had fully wound down, and Catherine Chen emerged, somehow looking impeccable despite the early hour. Her assistant hurried down the steps behind her, tablet in hand, looking decidedly less comfortable with their rural surroundings. "Ms. Chen?" Tom called out, awkwardly aware of his work-stained clothes and the hay clinging to his shirt. "Wasn't expecting you so early. Please call me Catherine." She navigated the uneven ground with surprising confidence in her expensive boots. "I hope you don't mind the unannounced visit. Emma's resting well, and I wanted to speak with you privately." Before Tom could respond, Sarah's voice rang out from the house. "Daddy, there's a plane in our field!" She came running down the path, still in her pajamas, then skidded to a stop at the sight of their visitor. "Oh, you're Emma's mom!" Catherine's formal demeanor softened. "And you must be Sarah. Emma hasn't stopped talking about you." She glanced at Tom. "Perhaps we could talk over coffee?" The kitchen's worn linoleum and chipped mugs were a far cry from what Catherine must be used to. But she settled at the table like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sarah, after being assured she could visit Emma again soon, reluctantly headed upstairs to dress for school. "Your daughter is remarkable," Catherine said, warming her hands around her mug. "Emma told me how kind she was at the hospital. She's got her mother's heart." The words slipped out before Tom could catch them. "I wondered." Catherine paused, delicately. "Emma mentioned Sarah talking about her mom being in heaven." Tom nodded, his throat tight. 4 years ago. Icy road, bad storm. I'm sorry." The words were simple but genuine. Catherine set down her mug. "Mr. Miller, Tom, I'll be direct. I've spent the night having my team research everything about this area, your farm, the challenges facing rural communities like this. I know the bank's been pressuring you." Tom stiffened. "I don't need charity." "Good, because that's not what I'm offering." Catherine leaned forward. "I'm offering a partnership. My company's been looking to establish a wildfire prevention and response initiative. We need someone who understands both the land and the human element. Someone who's demonstrated exceptional judgment under pressure." "You mean me?" Tom almost laughed. "I'm just a farmer." "You're a farmer who ran into an inferno to save my daughter when professionals weren't willing to risk it. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." She pulled out a folder. "The position would come with a salary, benefits, and a scholarship fund for Sarah's education. You'd keep your farm. In fact, we'd use it as a training facility. But more importantly, you'd be helping other families avoid what Emma went through." Tom stared at the folder, his mind racing. The sound of the school bus pulling up outside broke the moment. "Take time to think about it," Catherine said, standing. "Talk it over with Sarah. Emma's being discharged tomorrow. Perhaps you both could come for dinner. We can discuss details then." Sarah burst back in for her lunchbox. "And goodbye, Hug." As she headed for the door, she turned back. "Miss Catherine, will Emma be okay to come see the farm soon? I really want to show her our apple trees." Catherine's smile was warm. "I think that could be arranged." She watched Sarah run to the bus, then turned back to Tom. "You've done an amazing job with her. We do our best." Tom walked Catherine back to her jet, his thoughts churning. At the steps, she paused. "You know, Tom, sometimes life gives us second chances. The trick is being brave enough to take them." As the jet took off, Tom stood watching it disappear into the morning sky. The folder in his hands felt heavy with possibility, and for the first time in years, he let himself imagine a future beyond just survival. Dinner at the Chen residence, a modernist masterpiece perched in the hills above the valley, was an education in contrasts. Tom and Sarah stood in the soaring glass entryway, both feeling distinctly out of place in their Sunday best. Sarah clutched her carefully wrapped gift for Emma, a jar of their farm's honey and a handmade get-well card. "You came," Emma's voice echoed from above. She maneuvered her wheelchair expertly down the curved ramp that had appeared overnight, her cast already covered in hospital staff signatures. "Sarah, come see my room. Dad, there's a game room with a virtual reality setup. You have to try it." Tom caught Catherine's eye across the room, sharing an amused look at their daughters. Instant rapport. She'd dressed down for the evening in what probably passed for casual in her world, though Tom suspected her simple silk blouse cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. "The girls seem determined to merge our worlds," Catherine said, joining him. "Wine? It's from a little vineyard in Tuscany. Got any beer?" The words slipped out before he could catch them. To his surprise, Catherine grinned. "Thank God. I've been dying for something other than wine all day." She led him to the kitchen, all gleaming steel and marble, and pulled 2 local craft beers from the fridge. I did my research. Upstairs, they could hear Sarah and Emma giggling. The sound of happiness, pure and simple, bridged the gap between their different worlds. "Your home is—" Tom searched for a diplomatic word. "Ridiculous," Catherine supplied. "I know, the architects won awards, but most days it feels like living in an art gallery." She ran a hand along the pristine counter. "Emma hates it, says it never feels lived in, no matter how long we're here." Tom thought of his farmhouse's worn floors and paint-chipped walls, each scratch and dent a record of life being truly lived. "Houses need soul to become homes. Is that what makes your farm special?" Catherine's question seemed to carry more weight than casual conversation. Before Tom could answer, the girls reappeared. Emma had convinced Sarah to try on some of her clothes, designer labels mixed with farm girl practicality in a way that somehow worked. "Dad, Emma's never collected eggs from a chicken coop," Sarah announced, scandalized. "Or fed a cow." "And Sarah's never been in a helicopter," Emma countered. "Mom, couldn't we take them flying sometime?" The adults exchanged glances, both recognizing the hopeful conspiracy forming between their daughters. Dinner was a similar blend of worlds. Catherine's personal chef had prepared a feast, but it was the simple apple pie Tom and Sarah had brought that drew the most enthusiasm. Emma insisted on hearing every detail about farm life, while Sarah was fascinated by Emma's stories of traveling the world. "Your daughter has quite the business mind," Catherine commented, as they watched the girls plan elaborate schemes for combining farm life with modern technology. She suggested Emma could use her drone to help check the far pasture fences. Tom smiled, pride mixing with a touch of sadness. "She gets that from her mother. Rebecca was always the one with big dreams." "And what about you?" Catherine's question was gentle. "What are your dreams, Tom?" He looked at Sarah, animated and happy, already teaching Emma the hand gestures they used to call the chickens. "Just want her to have every chance at hers." After dessert, while the girls went to try the game room, Catherine led Tom to her study. The folder from their previous meeting sat on her desk, along with new documents. "I've revised the proposal," she said. "Added some elements I think you'll appreciate." She hesitated, then added, "Tom, I want to be clear. This isn't just about repaying a debt. You have something my company desperately needs: real understanding of rural communities, practical experience with natural disasters, and most importantly, the trust of people who often view big tech companies with suspicion." Tom picked up the folder, noting how the initial salary offer had been amended. The scholarship fund for Sarah had grown significantly, but it was the last page that caught his eye, a detailed plan for upgrading his farm's infrastructure while preserving its character. "You'd keep your independence," Catherine assured him. "Run the farm your way. We'd just enhance it. Make it a model for how traditional agriculture can adapt without losing its soul." From down the hall came another burst of laughter. 2 girls from vastly different worlds, building a friendship that somehow made perfect sense. "Think about it," Catherine said softly. "Not just the business side, all of it." Their eyes met, and for a moment something electric passed between them. Tom looked away first, his heart beating unexpectedly fast. Sometimes, he realized, the biggest changes came not as storms, but as quiet moments of possibility. The morning of Catherine's formal presentation, Tom stood in front of his bedroom mirror, fumbling with a tie he rarely wore. The suit, last used at Rebecca's funeral, felt stiff and foreign. From downstairs came the sound of Sarah chattering excitedly to Grace, who'd arrived early to help them prepare. "Here, let me," Grace said from the doorway. She stepped in and deftly fixed his tie, then brushed some dust from his shoulders. "You clean up nice, Tom Miller." "Feel like a fraud," he muttered, tugging at his collar. "No," Grace said firmly. "You feel like change. There's a difference." She stepped back, examining him with motherly criticism. "Rebecca would be proud, you know, of both of you." The drive to Catherine's company's regional office took them past his farm's north pasture. The morning sun caught the dew on his apple trees, making them sparkle. These trees had seen 3 generations of millers grow up beneath their branches. Would modernization mean losing that history? Catherine's assistant met them in the lobby, whisking them into a state-of-the-art conference room. Sarah immediately gravitated to Emma, who sat with her leg propped up, tablet in hand. "Good morning, Tom." Catherine's voice carried a warmth that seemed at odds with her professional attire. "Ready to talk about the future?" The presentation was comprehensive. Catherine had thought of everything: environmental impact studies, community involvement plans, educational outreach programs. The farm would become a training center for emergency responders while maintaining its working agricultural status. "We're not looking to change what works," Catherine explained, pulling up detailed blueprints. "Just enhance it. The barn stays exactly where it is, but we add modern safety features. The apple orchard remains untouched, but with advanced irrigation systems. Your house keeps its character while gaining energy efficiency." Tom watched the projections, his farmer's pragmatism warring with his natural caution. The numbers made sense, more than sense. The salary alone would erase his debt within a year. Sarah's education would be secured through college. "And a catch?" he finally asked. Catherine smiled, respect flickering in her eyes at the question. "You become the public face of our rural initiative. Speaking engagements, community outreach, some travel. Your story. The local farmer who saved a child from fire gives us credibility we couldn't buy for any price." "Not sure I'm cut out for public speaking." "Dad," Sarah interrupted from where she and Emma had been pretending not to listen. "Remember my school play, when I was scared to go on stage?" Tom turned to his daughter, remembering. "I told you. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what needs doing anyway." "Exactly." Sarah's chin lifted in a gesture so like her mother's that it made his heart ache. "Mom always said, opportunities are like shooting stars. They don't come around often, and you have to be brave enough to wish on them." Emma reached over to squeeze Sarah's hand, the gesture speaking volumes about the friendship forming between them. Catherine watched the interaction with soft eyes before turning back to Tom. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something not in the official proposal." She nodded to her assistant, who ushered the girls out for a promised trip to the building's cafe. Once they were alone, Catherine's professional demeanor slipped slightly. "Tom, I've spent my life building things. Companies, technologies, solutions. But watching Emma with Sarah, seeing how she lights up at your farm," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm not just offering you a job. I'm offering our children a chance at the kind of childhood they both deserve. Emma needs more than virtual reality and private jets, and Sarah deserves every opportunity without losing the home she loves." The weight of the moment settled around them. Through the conference room's wide windows, Tom could see the mountains where he'd run into fire to save a stranger's child. How many other families lived in those hills, one disaster away from losing everything? "I'd need to think about it," he said finally. "Talk it over with Sarah properly, of course." Catherine handed him a thick envelope. "The formal offer, including all the details we discussed. Take your time." "But Tom." She waited until he met her eyes. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is accept help when it's offered. The words echoed Rebecca's so closely that Tom had to look away. When he glanced back, Catherine was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Professional, yet personal, distant, yet somehow intimate. Outside the conference room, they could hear Sarah and Emma's laughter floating up from the cafe. Two worlds colliding, or maybe, Tom thought, two worlds finding a way to become something new together. The first morning of Tom's new life started like all his others. Before dawn, with the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders as he pulled on his work boots. Only this time, beside his worn pair, sat new steel-toed boots, their leather still stiff and shiny, emblazoned with the logo of Catherine's company. Both still fit, he muttered to himself, choosing his old boots. Some changes were better taken slowly. The farm was transforming, but carefully, respectfully. Solar panels gleamed on the barn's restored roof, while the heritage apple trees his grandfather had planted remained untouched, their morning shadows falling exactly as they always had. Modern met memory with surprising grace. Sarah burst out. Of the house, backpack bouncing. "Dad, Emma's coming over after school. Miss Catherine said she'd bring her when she comes for the project meeting." The project meeting. Tom's stomach tightened. Today, he'd begin training the first group of local firefighters and emergency responders in the new wildfire prevention protocols. His experience, Catherine had insisted, made him the perfect bridge between high-tech solutions and practical application. "Looking good, Tom," Earl called out as Tom loaded equipment into his truck later that morning. The old storekeeper gestured at the subtle improvements appearing around the farm. "Knew you'd find a way to keep the place going." "Thanks to Catherine." "Chen," Tom said, testing the name on his tongue. It felt strange talking about her so casually, like referring to a force of nature by its first name. Earl's eyes twinkled. Quite a woman, that one. "Stopped by the store yesterday, wanted to know all about local emergency response history. Didn't put on airs, neither. Bought a cup of coffee and sat talking like she had all the time in the world." The training session went better than Tom had expected. His natural quietness worked in his favor. The firefighters appreciated his straightforward explanations and hands-on approach. When Catherine arrived to observe, he was demonstrating how thermal imaging drones could be combined with traditional firebreak techniques. "The technology's amazing," he explained to the group, "but it's just a tool. Your judgment, your experience with the land, that's what makes the difference between data and understanding." Catherine, standing at the back of the group, nodded approvingly. She'd dressed practically today in jeans and a light jacket, her usual corporate armor set aside. The afternoon sun caught copper highlights in her dark hair, and Tom found himself stumbling over his next words. Later, while the trainees broke for coffee, Catherine joined him by the barn. "You're a natural teacher," she said. "They trust you because you speak their language." "Helps that the equipment actually works," Tom admitted. "When you first suggested drones and thermal mapping, I thought it was just tech for tech's sake. But seeing it in action," he shook his head, impressed, despite himself. "Sometimes the best solutions come from combining old wisdom with new tools." Catherine's shoulder brushed his as she leaned against the barn wall. The contact, though brief, sent an unexpected warmth through him. Their conversation was interrupted by delighted shrieks from the apple orchard. Emma, her cast finally off, was trying to teach Sarah how to operate a mini drone, while Sarah showed her the proper way to test apples for ripeness. The girls had created their own blend of their two worlds, neither seeming to notice any contradiction. "They make it look easy, don't they?" Catherine's voice held a touch of wistfulness. "This mixing of lives." Tom turned to look at her properly. The professional poise was still there, but softened by something else. Perhaps the same mix of hope and uncertainty he felt himself. "It's not always easy," he said quietly, "but maybe it's worth it." Their eyes met, and for a moment the careful distance they'd maintained began to blur. Catherine's hand moved slightly, almost brushing his on the weathered barn wall. The moment broke as one of the trainees called out a question. Tom straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. But as he walked away, he felt Catherine's gaze following him, carrying the weight of things not yet said. That evening, after the trainees had left and the girls had finished their homework together, Tom stood on his porch, watching Catherine's car disappear down the drive. Sarah came to stand beside him, her small hand slipping into his. "Dad?" she asked. "Are you happy about the changes?" Tom considered the question carefully. The farm was still his, but evolving. His life was still rooted in this land, but growing in new directions. And when Catherine smiled at him over project plans or shared jokes with Sarah, something long dormant in his heart stirred to life. "Yeah, sunshine," he said finally. "I think I am." The emergency alert came at 3 in the morning. A fire in the Northeast Valley spreading fast. Tom was already pulling on his gear when Catherine's call came through. "How bad?" she asked without preamble. "Bad enough. Wind's pushing it toward Mason Creek Farm. Henry's got 40 head of cattle up there." Tom grabbed his keys, mind racing through scenarios. "Your equipment picking anything up?" "Thermal imaging shows it's moving faster than predicted. I'm heading to the command center now." "The girls, Sarah's sleeping over at Emma's anyway," Tom finished. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm of sharing childcare these past few months. "Grace will watch them both if we run late." The command center hummed with tension when Tom arrived. Catherine stood before a wall of screens, her usual elegance replaced by fierce concentration. The thermal maps painted the valley in reds and yellows, the fire's path clear and threatening. "Mason's not answering his phone," one of the firefighters reported. "Could be asleep, could be trapped." Tom studied the terrain displayed on the screens. "Those cattle will be in the north pasture. Henry always moves them up there this time of year." He traced the fire's path with his finger. "If we don't get them out—" "I'm coming with you," Catherine said, already reaching for a safety vest. "Catherine, I've had the training," she cut him off, "and you'll need the thermal imaging to find them in the smoke." Their eyes met in a brief clash of wills. Tom saw not the polished CEO, but the mother who'd flown through the night to reach her injured child. He nodded once. The drive up was tense, with unspoken words. Catherine managed the communications, coordinating with the fire teams while Tom navigated. The darkened roads, the fire painted the sky in shades of hell. "You don't have to prove anything," Tom said finally, glancing at her white-knuckled grip on the thermal imaging tablet. "Neither do you." Her voice was soft but firm. "This isn't just your responsibility anymore, Tom. We're partners in this." The word partners hung between them, heavy with multiple meanings. They found Henry Mason trying to herd his panicked cattle away from the flames. The old rancher's relief at seeing them quickly turned to stubborn resistance. "I ain't leaving." "Them?" he shouted over the wind. "These cattle are my life. Then let us help." Catherine's voice cut through the chaos. She stepped forward, tablet extended. "Mr. Mason, we can see where the fire's moving. There's a safe path, but we have to move now." Something in her tone, respect mixed with urgency, reached him. Henry looked at Tom, who nodded. "She knows what she's doing, Henry. We both do." The next hour was a blur of smoke, heat, and desperate activity. Catherine's tech guided them while Tom's knowledge of the land kept them grounded. Together, they helped Henry move his herd to safety, the cattle bellowing their fear into the fire-lit night. Just as they reached the safe zone, a burning branch crashed down, missing Catherine by inches. Tom moved without thinking, pulling her against him and away from danger. For a moment, they stayed frozen, hearts pounding in shared adrenaline. "I'm okay," Catherine whispered, but didn't pull away immediately. Her hand gripped his shirt, and Tom became acutely aware of how perfectly she fit against him. The moment broke as the fire teams arrived, taking control of the situation. Henry's cattle were safe. The fire would be contained, but something had shifted between Tom and Catherine, like a photograph finally coming into focus. Dawn found them sitting on the tailgate of Tom's truck, watching the fire teams mop up. Catherine had soot on her cheek, and her expensive hiking boots were ruined, but her eyes were bright with triumph. "We did good work tonight," she said, accepting the coffee Tom offered. "We did." He hesitated, then reached over to gently brush the soot from her cheek. Catherine went still under his touch, her eyes meeting his with startling intensity. "Tom," she began, but was interrupted by approaching sirens as more fire crews arrived. They pulled apart, the professional mask slipping back into place. But something had changed. The careful distance they'd maintained was crumbling, burned away like underbrush in a cleansing fire. Back at the command center, Henry Mason was giving a statement to the local news. "Wouldn't have saved them without those two," he was saying. "Never thought I'd say it, but sometimes old ways and new ways need each other. Like them two, different as can be, but working together like they were made for it." Tom and Catherine shared a glance, then quickly looked away. Sometimes, Tom thought, the most dangerous fires weren't the ones you could see coming. The morning after the Mason Ranch fire, Tom found a coffee mug on his porch railing. Not one of his mismatched collection, but an elegant ceramic piece with a note propped against it. "For early mornings and late nights, Kay." He turned the mug in his hands, remembering the weight of her against him in that moment of danger, the way her fingers had gripped his shirt. The memory warmed him more than any coffee could. Inside, Sarah was already up, video chatting with Emma about their upcoming school science fair project. Their excited chatter about combining Emma's drone photography with Sarah's agricultural research filled the kitchen. Tom smiled, remembering two scared girls in a hospital room, now transformed into inseparable friends. His phone buzzed. "Catherine." "The girls are plotting something elaborate for the science fair," she said by way of greeting. Her voice carried a hint of last night's intimacy despite its professional tone. "Sarah's got all her grandmother's notes about apple cultivation spread across the table," Tom replied. "Think we're in trouble." Catherine's laugh was warm. "Listen, I need to stop by later to review the incident reports. Maybe we could—" "Dad!" Sarah called out. "Emma says Ms. Catherine makes really good pancakes. Can they come for breakfast?" Instead, Tom heard Catherine's surprised inhale through the phone. Breakfast was different from their usual project meetings. More personal, more like family. "Only if you're free," he said carefully. "We'll be there in 30 minutes. They arrived bearing proper breakfast supplies, fresh berries, real maple syrup, and coffee beans from some exotic location. Catherine moved around his kitchen with unexpected ease, her designer blouse protected by one of his old aprons. "Mom never cooks at home," Emma confided to Sarah, loud enough for the adults to hear. "But she says it's different here, more real." Catherine busied herself with pancake batter, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. Tom found himself noticing small details, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, how she automatically reached for things in his kitchen, as if she belonged there. The girls dragged their breakfast out to the porch to continue their science fair planning, leaving Tom and Catherine in a kitchen that suddenly felt more intimate without their buffer. "About last night," Catherine began, stacking plates with unnecessary precision. "You were amazing out there," Tom said quietly. "Most people in your position would have stayed in the command center. Most people in your position wouldn't have. Accepted help from a tech CEO playing firefighter." She met his eyes. "We make an odd team, don't we?" "Odd, but effective." Tom stepped closer, taking the plates from her hands and setting them down. "Catherine." The kitchen radio, still tuned to the local station, crackled with the morning news. Their own names caught their attention. Local hero, Tom Miller, and tech innovator Catherine Chen worked together to save the Mason Ranch herd. Sources suggest their partnership represents a new era in agricultural emergency response. Catherine laughed softly. "They have no idea." "About what?" Tom's voice was low, meant just for her. Instead of answering, she reached up and touched his cheek, her fingers tracing where a scratch from last night's fire had barely missed his eye. The touch lingered, becoming a caress. Tom caught her hand in his, holding it against his face. The moment stretched, full of possibility and fear. Then Catherine swayed forward, closing the distance between them. The kiss was gentle, tentative, at first, then deepening with months of unspoken longing. Tom's free hand found her waist, pulling her closer. She tasted of coffee and possibility, and something uniquely Catherine that made his heart race. A peal of laughter from the porch broke them apart. They stood breathing each other's air, neither moving away. "This complicates things," Catherine whispered. "Everything's already complicated." Tom brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Maybe this simplifies it." She smiled, her professional facade completely gone, leaving just Catherine, a woman, who looked at him like he was something precious and unexpected. The sound of running feet gave them just enough warning to step apart before the girls burst back in. "Dad, Miss Catherine, can we use the drone to map the whole orchard for science?" Tom looked at Catherine, saw his own joy mirrored in her eyes. "What do you think, partner? Should we help them with their science project?" "Partner?" she repeated softly, then turned to the girls with a bright smile. "Let's do it, but first—" She touched Tom's arm lightly, the gesture small but deliberate. "We should finish breakfast." The morning sun streamed through the window, warming the kitchen that now felt different, fuller, richer with possibility. On the counter, 2 coffee mugs sat side by side, his old ceramic next to her elegant new one, different but somehow perfect together. The newspaper headline caught Tom's eye at Earl's store. "Local hero or corporate puppet? Tech giant's rural strategy questioned." Below was a photo of him and Catherine at the Mason Ranch fire, her hand on his arm as they studied the thermal imaging display. "Don't let it get to you," Earl said, watching Tom's face darken. "City papers don't understand how things work out here." But the article's words burned in Tom's mind as he drove home. Sources question the authenticity of the partnership. Former neighbors express concern over Miller's rapid shift from struggling farmer to corporate spokesperson. Chen's history of acquiring and transforming rural properties raises eyebrows. His phone buzzed with Catherine's number. She'd be seeing the article too, probably dealing with press inquiries at a level he couldn't imagine. He let it go to voicemail, needing time to think. Sarah was waiting when he got home, her face worried. "Dad, Emma says people are saying mean things online about you and Miss Catherine. They're saying you're just doing this for money and she's just using us for publicity." The protective anger in his daughter's voice made his chest tight. "Sometimes people don't understand that things can be complicated and real at the same time, sunshine. But you like her, don't you? Not just for the project?" Before Tom could answer, the distinctive sound of Catherine's car coming up the drive saved him from having to find the right words. Sarah ran out to meet them, hugging Emma fiercely, as if to protect her friend from the world's judgments. Catherine looked composed, as ever, but Tom saw the tension in her shoulders. "Girls, why don't you go work on your science project?" she suggested. "Tom and I need to talk." In his kitchen, their kitchen, it had become in his mind, Catherine pulled up more headlines on her tablet. The stories grew progressively more sensational. Tech billionaires' rural romance, business or pleasure. Valley farmers question Miller's loyalty. Chen's latest acquisition more than just land. "My PR team wants to get ahead of this," Catherine said, her voice carefully neutral. "They suggest we either confirm the relationship with a controlled statement or maintain strict professional boundaries in public." "And what do you want?" Tom asked quietly. Catherine's professional mask slipped. "I want to not have to choose between my company's stability and—" She gestured between them. "This. Us. Would it really affect the company that much? Some board members are already questioning my judgment, suggesting I'm letting emotions cloud my business decisions." She laughed without humor, as if I haven't spent my entire career proving I can separate personal feelings from professional choices. Tom thought of the article's implications. "And I'm just a rural farmer who got lucky, right? Caught your eye by saving Emma, now living off your charity." Tom, no. Catherine reached for him, but he stepped back. Maybe they're right. Maybe we're fooling ourselves thinking this could work. Dad! Sarah's voice made them both turn. She and Emma stood in the doorway, hands clasped together. Are you going to stop being friends with Miss Catherine because of some stupid newspapers? Emma's chin trembled. Mom, you promised we wouldn't have to move again. You said we'd found home here. The girls' distress broke through the adult tensions. Catherine moved to hug Emma, while Tom knelt beside Sarah. No one's moving anywhere, Catherine said firmly, and no one's stopping being friends. But they're being mean to you, Sarah protested. Like Jenny Miller was mean to me when I got the lead in the school play, saying I only got it because everyone felt sorry for me not having a mom. Tom felt Catherine's sharp intake of breath. He remembered that incident, remembered holding his crying daughter and wondering if he was enough for her. You know what you told me then, Dad? Sarah continued. You said people sometimes say mean things when they don't understand that good things can happen even after sad things. That happiness doesn't mean you're betraying what you lost. Simple wisdom of children cut through their adult complications. Tom looked at Catherine and saw his own emotions reflected in her eyes. Love for their daughters, fear of loss, and something stronger than both. Your daughter is very wise, Catherine said softly. Gets it from her mother. Tom managed a smile. Rebecca always said life was too short to let fear of what others might think stop you from being happy. Catherine stepped closer, decision visible in her stance. So, what do you want to do? Tom thought about the newspaper in his truck, the whispers that would follow them, the complications ahead. Then he thought about morning coffee shared in comfortable silence, the way Catherine's eyes lit up when she talked about their project's future. How right she felt in his arms. I want to show our daughters that sometimes the brave choice is choosing happiness, he said, no matter what anyone else thinks. Catherine's smile was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Behind them, the girls exchanged triumphant looks, their own small alliance holding firm. The annual Valley Agricultural Conference had always been a local affair, farmers trading tips over coffee and pie in the high school gymnasium. But this year was different. News vans lined the parking lot, and unfamiliar faces with press badges mingled with the usual crowd. Tom stood backstage, tugging at his tie. He was supposed to present their wildfire prevention program's success, with Catherine joining him to discuss the technology integration. Their first public appearance since the news broke about their relationship. You're going to do great, Catherine said, appearing beside him. She reached up to straighten his tie, the gesture intimate despite their professional attire. Just talk to them like you talk to the training groups. A photographer's flash caught them through the curtain. Catherine's hands dropped quickly to her sides, and Tom saw the cost of constant surveillance in her eyes. Ms. Chen, her assistant called out. The board members are requesting a private word before the presentation. Tom watched her walk away, her spine straight but tension visible in her shoulders. Through the curtain, he could hear the murmur of the crowd growing. Mr. Miller, a reporter, had somehow slipped backstage. Can you address rumors that your relationship with Ms. Chen began before the rescue, that this was all orchestrated for... That's enough. Grace appeared like an avenging angel, steering the reporter away. Tom, Sarah's looking for you. She's nervous about introducing the youth agriculture program. But when Tom found Sarah in the conference room, she wasn't alone. A board member from Catherine's company was there, his expensive suit out of place among the 4-H displays. Just saying, young lady, that your father's involvement might be better focused on the agricultural side, leaving the technical presentations to more qualified individuals. Sarah's face was flushed with anger. My dad understands both parts. That's why it works. He and Ms. Catherine... Sarah, Tom's quiet voice cut through the tension. Why don't you go find Emma? The board member turned, a practiced smile appearing. Ah, Mr. Miller, just having a chat about presentation strategies. Perhaps we could discuss the optimal division of responsibilities. No, Tom said simply. We couldn't. He found Catherine in a heated discussion with other board members. The stock price is volatile enough without this personal entanglement. One was saying, the shareholders are seeing better results than projected, Catherine cut in. She saw Tom, and something flickered in her eyes. Fear, determination. Catherine, he said quietly, we need to talk. They found an empty classroom, children's artwork about plant life cycles decorating the walls. For a moment, neither spoke. They want me to step back, Tom finally said. Focus on being a local farmer mascot while the real experts handle the technical side. They're wrong. Catherine's voice was fierce. This works because of who you are, not in spite of it. And who am I, Catherine? Because right now, I feel like I'm losing myself in all this. Her old family photo caught his eye on the wall, Sarah proudly showing her first prize tomato plant, Rebecca's arm around her shoulders. The sight hit him like a physical blow. Tom? Catherine's voice was uncertain. I used to know exactly who I was, he said. A farmer, a father, a man trying to honor his wife's memory by raising their daughter right. Now I'm in the papers, giving speeches, defending our relationship to strangers. Are you saying it's not worth it? The hurt in her voice made him turn. I'm saying I don't know how to be this person they want me to be. The polished spokesperson, the perfect partner for a CEO. I never asked you to be that. Catherine's composure cracked. I fell in love with the man who ran into fire to save my daughter, who makes me feel at home in a farmhouse kitchen, who sees me, not my company or my bank account. The word love hung between them, spoken for the first time. Before Tom could respond, the door burst open. Emma stood there, tears streaming down her face. Sarah's gone. We had a fight because some kids were saying mean things about you both, and she ran away. They found Sarah's presentation notes scattered by the back door, leading toward the old nature trail. As they organized a search, Tom caught Catherine's eye. Everything else, the press, the board members, their own fears, fell away before the reality of their daughter in trouble. In that moment of shared panic and determination, Tom realized something important. They might not know exactly who they were becoming, but they knew exactly what mattered most. We'll find her, Catherine said, reading his thoughts. Together. Tom nodded, taking her hand despite the cameras starting to gather. Some choices were bigger than fear. The search teams spread out across the conference grounds, but Tom already knew where Sarah would go. Like her mother before her, she sought high places when troubled. The old Oak Ridge, he told Catherine as they hurried down the trail. Rebecca used to take her there for picnics. You can see the whole valley. Catherine pulled out her phone, fingers flying, sending coordinates to the drone team. No, Tom caught her hand gently. Sometimes technology isn't the answer. She needs her family right now, not search teams. The path to the ridge was steeper than Tom remembered. Catherine kept pace beside him, her heels long since abandoned for borrowed boots. They moved in sync, their shared worry creating its own kind of intimacy. Mom used to say, the valley looks like a patchwork quilt from up here. Sarah's voice carried down to them. She sat at the edge of the ridge, hugging her knees, Emma beside her with an arm around her shoulders. Tom and Catherine exchanged relieved looks, approaching slowly. The girls didn't turn around, but Sarah kept talking, her voice thick with tears. All the different fields and farms, sewn together like Grandma's quilts. But now, everyone's saying it's all changing, that we're ruining things by mixing old and new, that you and Miss Catherine are ruining things. Oh, sunshine. Tom settled on one side of Sarah, while Catherine sat beside Emma. Change doesn't always mean ruining. But everything's different now, Sarah burst out. The farm, school, how people look at us. Those kids said you're forgetting Mom, that Miss Catherine's trying to replace her. Sarah, look at me. Tom's voice was gentle but firm. Your mother will always be part of who we are. Nothing and no one can change that. But she taught us both that love isn't a finite thing. It grows. Like the apple trees, Emma said suddenly. Mom, remember what you told me about grafting? How you can add new branches to old trees and they become something stronger together? Catherine smiled at her daughter's insight. That's Right, the old roots support the new growth, and together they bear fruit. Neither could produce alone. Your mother understood that, Tom told Sarah. Remember the story about how she added roses to Grandma's garden? Everyone said she was changing tradition, but she knew the roses would make the whole garden more beautiful. Sarah wiped her eyes. I remember, and now they bloom every year with Grandma's peonies. The people down there, Catherine gestured, toward the conference, they're scared of change because they don't understand that some things stay constant even when life evolves. Like how much your dad loves you, like how Emma and I have found a home here with you both. We're not trying to erase the past, Tom added. We're growing something new from those strong roots your mum helped plant. Sarah looked between them, seeing perhaps for the first time, not just her father and her friend's mother, but two people building something precious and real. I kept her picture, you know, she said quietly, pulling a worn photograph from her pocket, the one of her in the garden. I was going to put it up at our presentation booth, but then I heard those kids talking. Catherine leaned forward to look at the photo. She was beautiful. You have her smile and her strength, Tom added softly. A warm breeze stirred the leaves above them, carrying the scent of wild roses that grew along the ridge. Sarah smoothed the photograph gently. Maybe, she said slowly, we could put this up together? With pictures of our new family too? Show how things can grow? Emma brightened. We could use it in our presentation. About how traditional farming and new technology are like grafting branches, old and new making something better together. The girls began planning excitedly, their earlier distress forgotten in the way of youth. Tom felt Catherine's hand slip into his, their fingers intertwining naturally. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For showing me that love isn't about replacing what was lost. It's about growing something new while honoring what came before. They sat together on the ridge, watching the valley spread out below them. Like Rebecca's patchwork quilt, each field and farm a piece of the larger whole. The conference center was visible in the distance, where people waited with their judgments and expectations. But up here, with their daughters' voices blending, with the wind in the oak trees, Tom and Catherine found their own truth. Love, like farming, was about faith in growth, respect for roots, and courage to nurture new possibilities. Ready to head back? Tom asked softly. Catherine squeezed his hand. Ready for anything, as long as we're in it together. The family made their way down the ridge as one, stronger for having weathered this storm, ready to face whatever came next. The girls' presentation at the agricultural conference became something of a valley legend. Standing together at the podium, Sarah and Emma told their story through the metaphor of grafting, traditional farming wisdom meeting modern innovation, creating something stronger through combination rather than replacement. The photograph of Rebecca in her garden held pride of place on their display, surrounded by new pictures. Emma showing Sarah how to pilot a drone, Catherine and Tom training firefighters, the girls collecting honey from the high-tech beehives. They'd helped design, past and present, woven together like the threads of a tapestry. Your mother would be proud, Grace whispered to Tom as they watched the girls field questions from the audience. Of all of this, a month later, Tom stood in his kitchen, their kitchen now, with Catherine's elegant coffee maker beside his battered percolator, watching Catherine help Sarah with her math homework. The scene was so natural, it made his heart ache with gratitude. If drones can map 50 acres per hour, Sarah was saying, and we need to survey the whole valley before fire season. Don't forget to account for charging time, Emma called from where she was updating their joint project journal. Dad showed us that last week, remember? The way Emma called him Dad now was still new enough to surprise him, but it felt right. Just as it felt right when Sarah started calling Catherine Mom 2 weeks ago, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence when she saw how it made both adults smile. Catherine caught his eye over Sarah's head, her look full of understanding. They talked long into the night about these transitions, about honoring the past while embracing their future. The family photos on the wall told the story, Rebecca's smile watching over new memories being made. We should show them the surprise, Catherine said, closing the math book. They've worked hard enough for one evening. Tom nodded, reaching for an envelope on the counter. Well, since you both aced your science projects, the girls leaned forward eagerly as Sarah opened the envelope. Inside were architectural plans, drawings of a treehouse laboratory designed to incorporate both traditional wooden craftsmanship and modern technology. Really? Emma breathed, eyes wide. Like a real research station? You'll help us build it, right, Dad? Sarah asked, already sketching additional features in the margins. Every step, Tom promised, though your mom's the one who designed the solar panels and weather monitoring system. Catherine smiled at the easy way he included her in the word. Mom now. And don't forget, this is a reward for responsibility. You'll need to maintain it properly. Like the apple trees, both girls chorused, giggling at their shared response. Later, after the girls had gone up to bed full of plans and excitement, Tom and Catherine stood on the porch in the gathering dusk. The valley stretched out before them, the first stars appearing above fields that had survived another season, growing stronger through change, rather than in spite of it. The board approved the expansion, Catherine said quietly. 3 more counties want to implement our program. They're calling it the Miller-Chen model. Tom pulled her closer, breathing in the subtle scent of her perfume mixed with the lingering sweetness of apple blossoms. Quite a change from those headlines a few months ago. Quite a change from a year ago, she murmured. When I thought success meant corner offices and quarterly reports. Now look at us, planning tree houses and teaching girls about drone farming. Having second thoughts? Catherine turned in his arms, her face serious in the fading light. Only about waiting so long to find this. To find you. She glanced up at the house, where the girls' voices drifted down through an open window. To find us. From inside came the sound of laughter. Sarah and Emma planning their treehouse laboratory with the boundless enthusiasm of youth. Their voices blended together like music, the soundtrack of this new life they'd all built together. You know what Rebecca used to say about timing, Tom said softly. That life brings you what you need exactly when you're ready for it, not a moment sooner or later. Catherine reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the smile lines that appeared more often these days. And are you ready for what comes next? Tom thought about the small velvet box hidden in his workshop, waiting for the right moment. About the way their separate lives had grown together, like branches grafted to create something stronger and more beautiful than either. Could have imagined alone. With you, he kissed her softly. I'm ready for anything. The girls were in on it, of course. Tom had sat them down one evening when Catherine was away at a conference, the small velvet box open between them on the kitchen table. Inside, 2 sapphires flanked a diamond on a simple gold band. One for each of you, he explained, watching their faces, because this isn't just about me and your mom. It's about all of us becoming a family. Sarah picked up the ring carefully, studying how the stones caught the light. Mom would have loved it, she said softly. She always said sapphires were like pieces of sky you could hold. Emma leaned against her almost sister. Does this mean we'll really be sisters? Officially? If that's what you both want, Tom said. But only if you're ready. The girls exchanged one of their long looks that seemed to contain entire conversations. Then they launched themselves at him, nearly knocking him off his chair with their enthusiasm. Planning the proposal proved more challenging than expected. Catherine was too observant, too attuned to their rhythms now to miss obvious preparations. But finally, inspiration struck during the treehouse laboratory's completion inspection. It was a perfect autumn evening, the valley painted in gold and crimson. The new structure nestled in the branches of the old oak tree, a harmonious blend of weathered wood and gleaming solar panels. Catherine was checking the weather monitoring system one last time, while the girls practically vibrated with anticipation. Everything looks perfect, Catherine said, making a final note on her tablet. You girls did an amazing job with the... She stopped, noticing a small display screen she hadn't seen before. What's this? Sarah and Emma exchanged excited glances as the screen flickered to life. A drone's eye view appeared, showing the valley from above. The camera panned slowly across the farm, following the paths they'd walked together. The fields. They'd transformed. Then it zoomed in on something Catherine hadn't noticed before, a pattern in the newly harvested north field. Words had been carved into the earth itself, visible only from above. "Marry me?" Catherine's hand flew to her mouth as she turned to find Tom behind her, down on one knee, in the treehouse their family had built together. The ring caught the setting sun, sapphires glowing like captured sky. "A year ago," Tom said, his voice rough with emotion, "a fire brought you into our lives. But that's not where our story really began. It began in small moments, morning coffee, homework help, late-night project discussions. It began with two girls showing us that family isn't about replacing what was lost, but growing something new." The girls moved to stand on either side of him, their faces glowing with joy and nervous anticipation. "The sapphires," Tom continued, "are for our daughters. Because I'm not just asking you to be my wife, Catherine. I'm asking if you'll help me make our family official. All of us, together." Catherine looked at the three faces before her. Tom's steady love, Sarah's hopeful smile, Emma's barely contained excitement. She thought about the past year, about morning kisses, tasting of coffee, about Sarah calling her mom for the first time, about Emma's laughter filling the farmhouse. "Well?" Emma burst out, unable to wait any longer. "Will you marry our dad?" Catherine laughed through her tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes to all of it. To being a family, to building our future together, to—" The rest was lost as the girls cheered. And the automated celebration sequence they'd programmed kicked in. Lights, strung through the treehouse, blazed to life, and the drone released a shower of flower petals they'd collected that morning. Tom slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close for a kiss that tasted of joy and promise. Below they could hear the sounds of arriving cars. Their friends and neighbors secretly gathered for a celebration the girls had helped plan. "How long have you all been plotting this?" Catherine asked, laughing as they climbed down to greet their guests. "Ages," Sarah said proudly. "Emma helped with the drone programming, and I designed the field pattern, and Grace helped with the party, and Earl kept you busy at the store this morning while we set up," Emma added. "The whole valley helped, Mom." The word "Mom" still made Catherine's heart soar. She pulled both girls into a tight hug, feeling Tom's arms wrap around all of them. From somewhere nearby, a camera clicked. Grace, capturing the moment. Their first official family photo, all of them laughing and crying and holding on to each other in the golden evening light. 1 year later, the Miller-Chen mailbox stood at the end of the drive, catching the morning sun. Behind it, the farm had blossomed into something that honored both its past and its future. Traditional apple trees now monitored by sophisticated weather sensors, historic barnwood complemented by solar panels, garden roses still blooming beside peonies. Tom stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching Catherine demonstrate the latest drone navigation system to a group of firefighters. She caught his eye and smiled, the sapphires on her ring flashing in the sunlight. Marriage suited them both, their different strengths weaving together like strands in a rope. The sound of teenage laughter drifted down from the treehouse laboratory, where Sarah and Emma were conducting their latest agricultural experiment. The girls had won the state science fair with their study on combining traditional farming wisdom with modern technology. Now, they were talking about agricultural engineering programs for college, still years away. But their shared dreams were already taking shape. "Your mother would love what this place has become," Grace said, joining Tom on the porch. She set down a pie for the evening's neighborhood gathering, a monthly tradition that had grown to include both farmers and tech workers, all drawn together by the success of what people now called the Miller-Chen approach. Inside the house, photos told their family's story. Rebecca's garden picture still held its place of honor, now surrounded by new memories: the wedding under the apple trees, the girls in their science fair ribbons, 4 people becoming a family, not replacing the past, but growing from it, like new branches grafted onto strong roots. The evening brought their extended family together around the farmhouse table. Grace and Earl, the Martinez family, Catherine's former board members who'd become friends, local farmers and firefighters. Children played in the yard while adults shared stories of the year's successes: fires prevented, farms modernized, communities strengthened. "Tell us again how it all started," one of the younger firefighters called out. "About the night of the rescue." Tom looked at Catherine, saw the same gratitude in her eyes. That fire had forged more than a business partnership or even a romance. It had created something rarer, a family built on choice and love, strengthened by the very differences that might have kept them apart. Later, after the guests had gone and the girls had retreated to their rooms, Tom and Catherine stood in their garden. The roses and peonies released their evening fragrance as stars appeared above the valley. "Any regrets?" Tom asked softly. Holding her close, Catherine turned in his arms, her face gentle in the gathering dusk. "Only that we can't show Rebecca how beautiful it all turned out, how her love gave us the courage to find our own." Above them, a shooting star traced a path across the sky. In the distance, the valley stretched out like a patchwork quilt, each field and farm a piece of the larger whole. Their story, like the land itself, had flourished through change while keeping its heart intact. Some fires, after all, don't destroy. They illuminate the path forward, showing us the way home.